So the current state of eBay as a seller. I'm going to tell you what I think based on just a lot of discussions I've had with many of you and other viewers and my own thoughts on the matter. And is this a viable place to make money long term? So let's talk about that on the other side. So without any further ado, let's go. Hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. This is John from Flippin' Ain't Easy. And today I just kind of want to talk to you about my thoughts on the state of eBay, the current state of eBay as it pertains to a seller. Whether you're part-time or full-time, it doesn't matter. But my perspective is from a full-time reseller because that's what my wife and I do. We work from home. We work all the time, but we enjoy what we do. Regardless of all the things that happen with eBay, we continue to enjoy what we do. And as long as we enjoy what we do, we're going to continue the grind. And I was looking today through, I don't know what prompted me to do it, but I was looking through bank statements. And this is a challenge that I have for many of you who've been reselling since, or actually before the pandemic. So we're like 3 years removed from the pandemic now. Or the start of the pandemic, not the end of the pandemic, but the start of the pandemic. And the reason why that's a measuring point for me is because that's when things changed for my business. And so I went back and I was looking at bank statements from 2019 when I first went full time. And I had daily deposits at the time, and I've had daily deposits really for, I think, until the beginning of this year, and then I went to weekly. But I was amazed in the number of daily deposits that were over $500 plus a day back in 2019. I went and checked 2020. Now I was buying exclusively liquidation merchandise. I can tell you that, I was making six figures easily on eBay, and that's sales. But after you figure in, I think I was making about a 60% margin over that period of time, because we're only dealing with like 13% PayPal fees, or actually eBay fees with the PayPal fees slapped on top of it. What I want you to do, if you take the time to do this, maybe take a half an hour, is if you've been reselling, I'd say since before the pandemic. It doesn't really do a whole lot of good to look if you've only been selling for a year or two. I'm talking about if you've been selling since like 2020 and before. Take a look at your bank statements and your eBay deposits. Have your eBay bank statements or have your eBay deposits gone up, or have they gone down? Have you made more or less? And just take a look at some of these deposits and compare them to what you're getting now. How do they compare? So I was really looking at my my deposits and like, wow, I was really doing well. And while I can't blame it all on the pandemic, there's a lot of different factors involved. This video isn't all about me, so I don't want you to think that this guy drugged me in to listen to him complain about how he's not making as much as he did back in 2019, because it's really not. I just wanted to start the video off by maybe having you do a little homework and just check your bank statements and see how well you've done basically since 2020. I'm willing to say that for many people, it's not as good as it was. And that kind of leads me into the state of eBay, because I'm sure I'm not the only one. And it makes me wonder. We get a lot of people who send me messages and they ask me what I think about eBay and the longevity of eBay. And my answer is always the same. As long as eBay has the traffic, as long as eBay gives us the traffic, the customers, the buyers to our site, to our items, then I think you're going to do fine. Maybe not as good, but I think you're going to do fine. And I get accused of doom and gloom, right? Like, it's always doom and gloom with you. You're always kind of talking negative about eBay. And I'm a straight shooter. I call the balls and strikes as I see them. If you're throwing balls, I'm not going to call them strikes, okay? eBay has done a lot to hurt themselves over the last, I'd say, few years. Anyone been selling since I believe since fall of 2020 can tell you that the glitches have been aplenty since then. With their updates, they have a fall update. They've got a spring update. And 2020 fall, if you guys remember, for those of you out there who sell clothing, can remember when eBay totally wiped out a bunch of your photos and your listings were ruined, okay? And you lost sales because of that. So the glitches we're seeing right now are just an extension of what we've been seeing for the last couple years. And because they continue to update a very broken infrastructure or website, unless they go in and scrap this site altogether and replace it with new technology, they're just going to keep repairing it with fall and spring updates. I mean, you don't see Amazon doing fall and winter seller updates. You don't see Mercari or Poshmark doing that. I mean, they might have some things going on in the background, but it's not an event like we have to deal with. It's an actual event. Here it is. We know it's going to happen twice a year, at least. And we always cringe when it happens twice a year because we know that every time they do something, they're going to break something. And, with this whole international shipping program I came out with a video on, well, we know that's breaking something in the background and they have to go back in and fix it because we're all beta testing the new software. And the future going forward is simply this. This is what we're going to be dealing with. And this is not a complaint video. This is just basically telling you how it is. I'm calling this a ball. It's outside, way outside, almost hits the batter because eBay is constantly making changes to their website, and at the end of the day, it's affecting sellers, and I'm sure it's affecting the buyer experience as well. And until eBay gets their act together and stops slapping band-aids on the problem and gets in there and actually fixes the underlying issues, this is the way it's going to be. And you're going to either have to accept it, or without losing your mind and your sanity, you're probably going to want to leave the platform. So that's another question people ask me. What other sites are out there that I can go to? And, the first question is, what do you sell? Because a lot of these sites are specialized, very niched out sites like Poshmark, maybe Grail. You have your Mercaris that you can sell pretty much everything on. But to be honest with you, if you're going to make the move away from eBay, you better be selling on all those sites collectively, because you're still not going to get the kind of traffic collectively that you'd get on eBay. And some people say move over to Amazon, and if you have the wherewithal to do that and you have an account that's old enough to where you can sell certain brands without being restricted, we call it gated, then you're going to have problems, and you're going to run into an even more strict platform. The folks at Amazon, they don't play. eBay gives you some warnings. Amazon sometimes won't even do that depending on the situation. So you got to be really, really careful when you're dealing with Amazon. So to me, it's all about the traffic. You take the traffic away, eBay becomes nothing more than Bonanza, and I'm actually thinking Bonanza's site looks a little bit more attractive than eBay at this point. And then eBay, instead of wanting to fix the problems that we're dealing with, they want to introduce new things like, let's give the buyer a chance to show photos with their negative feedback. So who knows what that's going to look like. It doesn't seem, I don't see how that's helpful to anyone. It seems like it's just another way to hurt the seller. For what reason? So I kind of shake my head at that idea, but let's see what happens with that. I wouldn't be nearly as upset about them doing that if we had a glitch-free site to work within, but I guess their priorities are way off base, and they're just trying to make the site look up to date with all these features that they can tout, and they are very silent on the things that are broken. So another reason to kind of go back to your bank statements over the last few years and compare them to what you're doing now, and just to see if you keep track of your records. I can tell you I was upwards of 50 to 60% margin on a lot of the stuff I was buying and reselling. And that's because the fees weren't so crazy high. Effectively, eBay has just jacked up the fees from 12.95% back in the day to well over 20%. And I'm sure if you're not playing the promoted listing game, you're still paying about 13%, but you're really leaving a lot of sales on the table, and they know that. And they know eventually your sales are going to get so slow as not having the promoted listings that you're going to basically give in and start promoting. And they'll start you off at 2%, right? It was 1%, but that wasn't good enough. So they now tell people it's required to have at least 2%. And everyone, not everyone, but a lot of the people who are promoting are hovering around the 2% mark because they feel like they have to, and they don't want to give up any more money than they need to. So they cap out at 2%. And yeah, it gives you a little bit better boost than if you're not promoting. But if you're not playing with the big boys at over 5%, it was, now it looks like they're recommending almost 10% or more on every new listing that I launch. And it's going to continue moving the bar. The bar is going to keep moving. At some point, eBay is going to say it's additional 3% if you want to promote your listings. And they're going to start recommending 11, 12, 13, 14, 15%. And when you start dealing with percentages instead of fixed rates, that's all that eBay can do is move that bar up based on percentage, which is going to be eventually it's going to be non-sustainable for a lot of smaller sellers. And if you're not into your product for a really low price, you're going to have a hard time keeping up with a lot of the big time sellers that are getting their product at a very huge discount. They're buying large lots of this stuff at a time, whether it's wholesale or liquidation. But if you're buying it piece by piece or going to the yard sales, I think it's going to drive a lot of folks out. So my prediction is that eBay is going to continue with the glitches. eBay is going to continue finding creative ways to fee their seller, because that's the only way they're going to be able to show that they have profits when they're losing sellers. I mean, if we had the same number of sellers, or if they were interested in growing the number of sellers, right, on the platform, along with growing the number of buyers and getting more sales on the platform, they wouldn't have to jack up the rates. But because they're losing sellers, they're losing buyers, they have to make the most out of each and every sale, even though the number of sales are dwindling every quarter. And I don't know when it ends. When does eBay decide that they're going to advertise to some of the younger generations and stop advertising just eBay Motors, stop advertising the watches, the cards, the sneakers? And there's nothing wrong with those things, but if you're introducing eBay to a newer generation of buyers and all they think of when they think about eBay is watches, purses, high-end jewelry, or you know what I'm talking about, sneakers, baseball cards, maybe eBay Motors, well, the next time they need something that you're selling, which isn't any of those things, they're not going to look there first. They're going to look at places like Mercari. They're going to look at Amazon, right? They're not going to think, well, Amazon's price too high, let me check out eBay. It's not going to even come across their mind. And I think eBay's doing a really bad job of introducing their platform to people who don't have experience with eBay. And thank goodness, in my opinion, for Google Shopping, at least eBay is promoting their listings. So if someone does a simple Google search, they can find your item through eBay that way. That's why you get a lot of people who may buy that have no feedback, and they've just signed up for an account recently because they found it through an external site like Google. To me, it's not only because of the errors and the glitches, but it's the management side of things. Making the wrong decisions on implementations on the site that make no sense, pictures and negative feedback, and the idea that we're not properly, all the other categories aren't properly being promoted to the newer generations. With that all in mind, the question is eBay still a viable way to make money? And here's the good news. Yes, eBay is still a viable place to make money. A viable way, reselling is a viable way of making money through eBay. And simply put, for the amount of effort you put in 3 or 4 years ago to make the same amount of money, you're going to have to probably put in maybe 1.5 to 2 times the effort that you did before. And that's why if you're not buying low and selling high and have a model or maybe a way to source that allows you to find those kind of items, you know what? I don't like the idea of building a huge store. That's not my business model, but I can see how people building a store full of thousands of items and playing the numbers game. Maybe you're used to having 1,000 items in your store. Maybe pumping it up to 2,000 to 3,000 might be the way to offset the losses, because the number of sales are going down, and that's a fact. And that's going to push the smaller sellers out. So you can decide to remain small, but you need to find items that are going to keep your margins high and have demand at the same time. Otherwise, if you're just buying and selling the same stuff you've been selling that sold back in 2019 just fine, but they're not selling as well now, well, you're going to have a lot more of that, and that means you're going to have to grow a larger store. So there's many ways to succeed with eBay going forward. But I think doing the same thing, if you're struggling right now and doing the same thing that worked for you 4 years ago but really hasn't, and look, I'm guilty of that, guys. I was hanging on to the liquidation game for many years, actually for a good year and a half, longer than I should have, without expanding my knowledge into yard sales, thrift stores, and other ways of finding merchandise. So I have many different eggs, but they're not in the same basket. They're all in different baskets as it pertains to sourcing, and I'm a lot better for it. So if you're doing the same thing and struggling, it's time to make a change, time to get uncomfortable to make this eBay thing work moving forward. Otherwise, I hate to say it, you might be one of those that just give up, because it's going to be very difficult to compete moving forward. So I want to know what you guys think. What do you think about the future of eBay as it pertains to the site? Yeah, I think errors and glitches are here to stay. Just going to be something we're going to deal with. Don't complain about it anymore. Just let's share it with each other. Let's acknowledge that it's a problem, and then just figure out how to navigate around it. What do you guys think about the future of sourcing and being able to buy the current type of items you buy and still make a good profit? I want to know down below. Comment down below. Let me know what you think on those two subjects. So do me a favor, as I always ask you to do, hit that like button if you enjoyed the discussion we had in this video. Of course, if you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing. So for those of you who are relatively new to the business, just know this. Keep watching content. You're going to learn that way. You're going to learn from mistakes from me, which I make all the time, and other YouTubers out there. And just continue to find ways to buy items at a low price and to sell them as high as you possibly can. And along the way, you're going to get nuggets, and you're going to figure out what works and what doesn't, and find ways to get uncomfortable and make that the norm for you, because the more willing you are to get uncomfortable, to do things that you normally wouldn't do or you would prefer not to do, then the easier it's going to be when eBay starts pushing the smaller sellers out. But these are all things we have to anticipate, and just yet another example of how sometimes flipping ain't easy. And I want you guys to have an excellent rest of your day, and we will talk to you very soon.